Jane.
And now we'll move on to Mike Elliott, and we'll remind you out there, if you're in Brooklyn Center, be sure to take down his phone number and email so you can be in contact with him. And we'll let you introduce yourself out to our wider audience, but especially to the people in Brooklyn Center.
Yeah, I am just delighted to be here. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Mike Elliott, and I'm running for mayor of Brooklyn Center. I went to Palmer Lake Elementary and graduated from Brooklyn Center High School. Yeah, in 2003. I can still remember, I think in 9th grade, walking up the stairs of City Hall to get a permit so we could do a car wash at a shopping mall that is no longer there now, over on 57. So that's a little bit about me. I have a background in international management, from a degree from Hamline University, and a background in economics and political science. I'm a 17-year member of the Brooklyn Center community. I served on the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance and the Brooklyn Peacemaker Center Board, and with Dean Nyquist, who is no longer with us. And I also currently serve on the board of directors for SEEP. I'm the founding advisor for the Brooklyn's Youth Council as well. So I formed and created that youth council.
So you've been involved in lots of different ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now we'll move on to issues that are facing Brooklyn Center that are of particular concern to you as you're going forward with trying to get elected as mayor.
Yeah, this is something that I come across a lot, when I'm door knocking, folks are talking to me about, their concerns. But if you look at our city, we have really fallen behind compared to our neighboring cities in Brooklyn Center. We've got a rich history of, a very rich, vibrant history of being the shopping center, for the area. We've lost almost all of that now. And one of the problems that we have now is that we've got all these, we got businesses that are coming in, but they're, ultra low wage jobs that are coming in. That's a real problem for our families, because we know that in order for our kids to be fine, our families got to be able to make enough money. So, so that's a problem we've got to address. It's not just enough for us to have some development. We've got to look at the net effect of that development, and it's got to be positive for our families. That's one issue. The other issue that, a lot of the city council people will tell you that it's not their issue. They'll say, hey, it's a school board issue. And that's the issue of education. Right? Right now, if you look at Brooklyn Center High School, the building, over 80% of the kids are failing reading, math, or science, or a combination of it. That's a problem, and it's a long-term problem, right? Because what happens when those kids graduate, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and if kids aren't graduating and entering the workforce with the kind of skills they need, what's going to happen? If you're a homeowner looking to buy a home, you're going to look at the schools if you've got kids, and you're going to say, "Oh, the school's good." If the schools aren't good, you're going to buy your home elsewhere. So that's a problem, right? For the city council then, because that affects the kind of revenue that we can get from our property tax base from homeowners, right? If you've got fewer homeowners, you've got less revenue coming in. Businesses will look at the schools and they'll say, well, if 80% of the kids are failing reading, math, and science, then the workforce isn't educated. We can't locate in the city. That's a problem for city council, because then that dries up your tax base. So one of the things that we have to do, this next mayor of Brooklyn Center has to do, is you have to be able to have a systematic view of the city. And you have to be able to understand and appreciate how all the pieces are connected. And that's definitely what I want to do. So we've got to tackle our issue of education. We got to provide more support for our families and our kids, more opportunities for our young people in the city. We've got to also make sure that we're diversifying our businesses. Two prongs. I've got a two-pronged approach. One, I want to make sure that we're setting up a small business development center. And this is really an opportunity for us to grow our economy locally. So a lot of people in the city have they're entrepreneurial. They've got business ideas. They've started businesses. We want to help them establish and grow their businesses right here in Brooklyn Center. We're famous for growing crop, and well, the new crop is growing businesses in Brooklyn Center. And then number two, what I will do as mayor is set up a a business task force whose job it is to identify the kind of businesses that residents want in Brooklyn Center, and then go all around the country and identify those businesses and those companies and provide, recruit them to come into our city. Those are the kind of proactive things that we need to do to make sure that we're shaping our destiny, we're shaping our path, and we're not just sitting behind and letting things, happen as they are, and in the meanwhile falling behind the successes of our neighboring cities.
Right. And then I'll ask you too, what are you hearing from people? Because you've got things you want to tell people, but what are you hearing from them when you're knocking on the doors?
I I hear from people very, very often. Last night I was door knocking and I talked to a gentleman. He got laid off just before he could retire. His company went under, and he had to go from $20-something an hour to trying to find some minimum wage income. Thankfully his wife was still working, but they're struggling. Mm-hmm. I talked to a young lady who actually lives in my neighborhood. She and her husband, they are struggling as well. She's in her late 20s, but she's an injured mm-hmm. vet. And so they're struggling to try to make ends meet. They're struggling with health care, with the job market, and then in some cases, the fees and penalties from the cities, from the city government, for things that they're working to already take care of. They told me that they bought the home. There was an old shed in the back, and the assessor came out there and said, you've got 4 days in the middle of winter. You got 4 days to get rid of this, or else we're going to give you a fine. Now, they just bought the home, and that was already there. We've got to be able to work with our residents, right, on an individual basis, and have compassion.
Okay, and now I want to give you plenty of time to tell the voters out in Brooklyn Center why they should vote for you come November 4th.
For us here in Brooklyn Center, we really have fallen behind our neighboring cities. We need new leadership. We need change. We need leadership that's going to invigorate our city, that's going to talk up our city, that's going to bring together all the various communities within our city. We've got the most diverse city in all of Minnesota, and we can harness that and bring our people together so that we can form a common vision and a way forward. With me as mayor, we're going to be, Mayor Lundy, we're going to be in competition, okay? We're going to be first in jobs. We're going to be first in education, all right? And one of the things I want to make sure that we're doing is we're looking at the overall quality of life for our residents. Not just, what kind of revenue do we have coming in, but how are people living?
And then what would you not want to change about Brooklyn Center?
Like Mayor Lundy said, Brooklyn Center has a very rich history. We've got a history of innovators in our city. Earl Brown started the state trooper program. So we need to build on that. We've got a lot of people in our city that are trailblazers. We need to build on the rich history of our city, and then we need to embrace the great diversity that we have here, mm-hmm. so that we can form a new path forward to prosperity for our residents.
Okay, well, thank you all for taking time out of what's a very busy schedule, I know, because there's a lot to do when you're running for office. Yeah. So we appreciate your being on our program. And then we want to tell those of you out there that we hope that you're taking some time and effort, starting with our show, to gather information about the candidates that are running in your particular city. And also we want to encourage you to check to see if you're registered to vote. If you're not sure, go to the Minnesota Secretary of State site, and there's a whole segment that will give you lots of information there. They can give you information on where your polling place is by putting in your address. You can put in and find out if you are currently registered to vote, because there are some requirements if you haven't voted for a while. You can register to vote on election day. Go to that site if you've got any questions about voting, so that you'll be ready on November 4th to vote, and most particularly that you'll take the time to gather information about your city council and your mayors. We're glad that you're with us, and we hope you'll join us again next week. Bye.